Today we're going to talk about percent proportions. So we're still using the same proportion setup, but we're looking at problems that are using percentages to compare numbers. So you'll always see a percent sign or the word percent in a percent proportion problem. So the first ratio is going to compare the part of a quantity to the whole quantity. So that's this first ratio here, okay? And the second ratio is always the equivalent percent out of 100. So this 100 is always there. Where we're plugging in numbers is in these three parts here, okay? So there's 4 parts to percent proportion. You have the part, the whole, the percent, and 100. Like I said, that 100 is always going to be there. So what are these different parts? The part is part of a whole. So if you're thinking of pizza, part of a pizza would be like 1 slice of the pizza or 2 slices of the pizza out of the entire pizza, okay? The key thing to look at is the number that represents the part is usually before or after the word is. So that clue word for you is, okay? Versus the whole is the entire thing, the total amount, okay? For example, the whole entire pizza would be the whole pizza. The key part here is that it's always after the word of, so our key word is of. So I think it's easier to identify the whole because it's always going to be after the word of. Versus the word is, it could be before or after it, okay? Then we have our percent, which is always followed by the percent sign, and then it's always out of 100. So the bottom ratio should always be 100. So looking at some examples here again, we've said we've got the part over the whole, which of represents the whole, is the percent out of 100. So sometimes you'll hear it referred to as is over of equals the percent out of 100. So it just clues you in the number by the word is, the number after the word of, and the number with the percent sign. So let's look at an example. Number 1, what number is 60% of 130? So, first thing that I always look for, actually I'm going to look at that here, okay? With these 4 parts, automatically you always put the 100. But then after that, the first thing I look for is always the percent. So when I'm looking here, I'm looking, do I see a percent sign or do I see the word percent? Yes, I see a percent sign. The percent we're talking about is 60. So I know it's always out of 100, and I found my percent right away, 60%. The next thing that I look for, it's either going to be the part or the whole. I think the next easiest thing to find is the whole because it's always going to be after the word of. For the part, it could be in either direction connected with the is. So what I'm looking for is the word of, okay? With my other highlighter, we've got, I see the word of. What follows the word of? It says of 130. So of is our whole. That goes on the bottom, so 130 goes on the bottom. And then the last part, we should have an unknown. And if we look at this, I'm going to underline this. It says what number is. We don't know what that number is, so that is our unknown. Now we have a proportion that we can solve. I'm going to highlight my 2 diagonals. The 2 numbers that need to be multiplied are 130 times 60. Oopsies. Which equals 7,800. The number I need to divide by is the number in the same diagonal as the variable, so I need to divide by 100, and I get 78. All right, number 2. What percent of 24 is 18? So again, before I start, I can plug in 100. I know it's always going to be out of 100. Percent is always out of 100. Next thing I look for is the percent. I don't see a percent sign, but I see the word percent and it says what percent. That means we don't know the percentage, so that is actually going to be our unknown. And that means the other two numbers are going to go here. Remember, the next thing that I look for after that is the word of and the number that follows. So I found of, and the number that follows the word of is 24. So of is our whole that goes on the bottom, which means the other part is 18 is our part. Now I'm going to highlight my two diagonals. I'm going to multiply the two numbers in the same diagonal, so 18 and 100, which equals 1,800. I'm going to divide by the number in the same diagonal as the variable. So dividing by 24, and I get 75. I'm going to look back at this problem though. What were we solving for? What percent? We were solving for the percent. So we should include a percent sign in our answer. All right, number 3. 60 is 90.5% of what number? So again, first thing, we know it's always going to be out of 100. Next thing, I'm looking for the percent sign. I see my percent sign right here, 90.5%. So that goes where the percentage goes in our proportion. The next thing I look for is the word of and the number that follows. So of, this time it says what number. There's not a number that follows. So that means we don't know that number. That's what we're solving for. So the variable needs to go in the place of the whole. And then the other number, 60 is going to be our part. Now we can highlight our two diagonals. Going to multiply the two numbers that are in the same diagonal, 60 and 100. That equals 6,000. Divide by the number in the same diagonal as the variable. Divide by 90.5. And we get about 66 3/10. All right, number 4. 45 is 38% of what number? So again, first thing, we always know it's out of 100. Next thing, I'm looking for my percent sign. I see the percent sign here. It's talking about 38% out of 100. Then I look for the word of and the number that follows. This time there's not a number. It says what number. So of what number? We don't know the whole. That's going to be our variable. That means the other number, 45, is the part. Now we're going to highlight our two diagonals. Multiply the two numbers in the same diagonal, so 45 times 100 equals 4,500. Divide by the number in the same diagonal as the variable, divided by 38 equals about 118 4/10. All right. For the U try, I'd like you to do 125 is 70% of what number?